What's something nobody warned you about being an adult? Story 1. How incredibly hard it is to make and keep close friends once you leave school, college. You have to actively schedule time and put in work. Friends don't just happen naturally when you're 30 like they did when you were 15. Answer. The cheat code for that is recurring social hobbies. I've been really fortunate to have been able to meet a great assortment of cool friends through D&D, pub quizzes, hash runs, board game nights, and other stuff. It still takes time to go from friendly acquaintance to actual friendship, but the key is putting yourself out there on a regular basis with folks who have similar interests. Story 2. I did not appreciate nor respect what my parents, the adults in my life, did just in transportation to and from programs, events, games, hanging with friends, and all that. Wow. Answer. Same thing happened to me. It wasn't until I grew up and became an adult that I truly realized all the effort my parents put in to get me where I am today. Our parents always want the best for us. They would have given their lives for us. Now it's our turn to honor them for everything they did. Even the tibs we didn't see or appreciate at the time. That love was always there. Story 3. You have to choose to get fit and stay fit unless you have an active as hell job. Even then, you have to eat right because your metabolism says, "Ha, you thought." Story 4. Realizing I have to decide what to eat every single day for the rest of my life is honestly exhausting. Answer. That's mostly when you grow up around a culture of craving something different every day. I'm sort of like that, mostly because I still live with my parents. But if I have to live in my own, I don't have an issue with making a batch of food and making it last for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the rest of the week, like making a sheet pan lasagna and eating that until it's gone. That's mostly the main idea behind meal prepping too. Story 5. Why are trash cans so expensive? I'm not talking about the ones for the garbage trucks. I'm talking about the ones you keep in your home. Why did my simple trash can cost me $50? Story 6. How much healing of your younger self still needs to be done. And how selfless you must be to properly have a family. Answer. How selfless you must be to properly have a family. Big oof. Seriously, the smallest act of self-care becomes wildly selfish upon having kids. Long day at work and want to put your feet up for a little bit? Fat fudge chance. Add on the guilt that any me time is necessarily pushing more onto your partner's plate. A modest hobby you've been wanting to explore? Fudge you. Even want to get a project done around the house without incessant familial interruption? Wrong again. It is a serious burden and deficit on one's mental health, and something that is not talked about enough to those thinking about starting a family. You should be in an excellent place in both your own mental health and relationship with your partner before having children. Instead, many think it'll be a magic elixir that'll fix issues with the aforementioned. Story 7. You can hurt yourself easily. One time I stretched, and one of my neck vertebrae shifted in a bad way. I could not turn my head. Story 8. Hey OP, 49-year-old married father of 2 in the UK here. 3 things for me. That at some point, being an adult and a parent just seems to be tidying the kitchen over and over again. That being an older, 50-ish, adult is really quite nice. I'm now the most relaxed and content I've ever been. That when you get married to a woman and grow older together, she somehow just becomes sexier and sexier. When I was younger, I kind of assumed it'd always be attracted to younger women. Nope, turns out that a curvy, confident, graying, middle-aged woman is all of that and more. Story 9. That hard work, caring about your job, being a team player are never appreciated or respected by employers. That the more you do, the more they expect. Answer. This is the truth. I learned this when I was working at a factory in my early 20s. Basically, there was a standard quota everyone had to do for finished product. Being new, I wanted to prove myself or whatever, so I was going way over the quota. After a while, I decided to just do the standard like everyone else. I actually got in trouble because we know you can do more. Meanwhile, everyone else just did the standard. I ended up leaving due to that job really not being for me. It was pretty miserable there. Also, a similar topic regarding going above and beyond. Some places, it doesn't matter when it comes to promotions. You can work your jerk off, but will still be passed over for promotions by someone with less seniority and less experience due to nepotism. Story 10. Adults who are given a small amount of power tend to misuse it because they've never had power before. Don't actively fight them, but do resist. Story 11. Most people are walking around with their own brand of personal imposter syndrome feelings on a regular. The majority of people you meet are insecure and don't have anything figured out. It's the ones that try the hardest and loudest to convince you otherwise that you should keep an eye on. Answer: that's only partly true. There are people out there on the other side of the self-success spectrum. I work with people that, like you said, in varying degrees, question whether they're qualified to be there and whether they really deserve recognition. And I also work with people who seemingly know to their core that they know their job better than any of their peers and are absolutely justified second-guessing everyone else's work, even to the point of correcting it without consultation. Story 12. The amount of times you can make mistakes always has others looking down on you. We're all just human and growing daily. Wish more people understood. No one gets life right the first time. Story 13. That you will keep learning until you are gone. I thought that when I become an adult with responsibility, I will become the best version of me and I will know what I want. I still feel lost and don't know what the F I want from my life. Story 14. No one told me my parents would never stop seeing me as a kid. My father straight up doesn't respect me as a man and would rather lie and gaslight me to control me than realize I can make decisions for myself. Story 15. Celebrations happen when you make them happen. Christmas spirit needs to be actively called in to arrive. Otherwise, it's just a slightly festive lunch. Story 16. That adulting is so hard. How do people manage to work, exercise, eat, socialize, and sleep every day? It's beyond me. Story 17. I grew up poor in a black neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. In my late 20s, I moved about 20 minutes away to Kettering, Ohio. When you grow up poor, you always know that you're at a significant disadvantage, but it's not until you leave that you really understand it. The entire system, down to city planning, is designed to keep you poor and forgotten about. I've been living here for about 5 years, and I haven't had one single reason to go over to that side of town. I realized you could get up for work, drive your car out of the garage, get on the highway, drive to your job and drive home, and pick up groceries on the war, and never once see a poor person for years. Your life is completely isolated from the real world. I would be in the school drop-off line, surrounded by Mercedes and Audis and Teslas, yet only 20 minutes away. The kids at my old school are in first period, shaking like a leaf, because the only time they ate was yesterday at school. If you spend your entire life in well-off area, your only idea of a poor person or black person would be what you saw on TV. I'm typically the only black person except for a handful of others I see in passing. It's wild. My girlfriend is a white woman. Her family owns a house on Lake Erie. Anytime we go up there, I never see any person of color for the entire weekend. Bars, restaurants, out on the lake, etc. It's as if they don't even exist. The street I used to walk to school on is still cracked and broken, and it feels like driving on a gravel road. Yet the road outside of where I live now has been replaced twice within 5 years. And then to end all this, I'm still poor. I'm still one paycheck away from financial ruin. It's a system designed so if you fall down there, you'll never make it back out. Answer: I'm white, and it's crazy how fudge racially segregated adulthood is, especially for black people. I know my suburb was very white when I was young, but that was the suburbs. I went to college in the city, and there was so much racial diversity and integration. And I figured the whiteness was just a suburbs thing. But now I'm working in the same city, and it's crazy fudge segregated again. We were just playing pretend for a few years, I guess. Story 18. The plan for the future is not the same for everyone. When I was a child, I thought the future was finish high school, finish college, get married, buy a house, have babies. What I didn't realize is that college isn't for everyone. Homeownership is hard and takes a lot of time. And sometimes it's better to make the decision not to have kids. At least, that's how it has been for me. I'm sure others feel differently. Story 19. That eating cereal for dinner would feel like a gourmet life choice, and taxes would be scarier than any horror movie. Story 20. How everyone you know eventually dies, even ones you thought were invincible. It might sound stupid, but I truly didn't realize the hurt and pain that comes with loving others until I became older. Story 21. How relentless it is. There's always something needing to be taken care of. If you're lucky, it's only one something. But usually when you think it's only one something, it's because you're forgetting about something else. Story 22. that adulting is mostly boring chores. You think being an adult is all freedom and cool stuff, but a huge chunk is just paying bills, doing laundry, remembering to eat veggies, and something else. It's not glamorous. Also, sleep never feels the same. You think staying up late is fun, but then your back hurts, your brain won't shut off, and suddenly you're jealous of toddlers who nap whenever they want. Story 23. The constant, low-grade terror of administrivia. You don't just have to do the dishes. You have to remember that you need to buy more soap, and that the sponge smells, and that the drain is slow. It's a never-ending game of whack-a-mole with tiny, boring problems. Story 24. Ugh, that it sucks, LOL. Nah, probably that you actually don't have a ton of choices and freedom. There are so many responsibilities and I'm always spending money on not fun things. And there are not hoverboards. Story 25. Nobody warned me about how tired you feel. Like, all the time. You go to work, come home, maybe try to eat something semi-decent, and then, wow, it's 9 p.m. and you're trying to decide if it's worth starting a new show or just staring at the wall in silence. Story 26. You will no longer be able to subsist on Taco Bell and Mountain Dew. You will need, even want, to eat fresh vegetables and to drink water. Story 27. That the adults you grew up around are as broken and lost as you are, and none of them ever really have all the answers. Story 28. Nobody warned me how much of adulthood is just constant problem solving, even for little things. I also didn't realize how lonely it can sometimes feel, even when you're surrounded by people. Story 29. The relentlessness of it all. Unless you have a trust fund, you can't take more than a brief break from adulting. Story 30. That adults are basically just winging it. I was under the impression they had it together when I was growing up. Story 31. Dealing with the fact that 20 to 30 of everyone you interact with is a racist and cannot be trusted at all. Story 32. Nobody has it together. Everyone is just figuring it out as they go. As a kid, we lived in the illusion that adult life was about having independence and having it all figured out. In reality, everyone is just cosplaying. Story 33. As a kid, the only reason I wanted to adult was to be able to eat whatever I wanted for breakfast, even cake or pizza. Otherwise, I knew it was highly overrated. Story 34. People will be rude as hell to you for no reason, especially in workplaces. So many times I've been ready to box because the way people randomly flip out. Story 35. The biggest struggle in my life is figuring out what's for dinner. Every single fudge day. Mainly because I have a family to feed. If it was just me, I could fudge care less. I'll eat a bowl of broccoli. Id gaff. Story 36. How deeply disappointed I would be with people in general. Friends, neighbors, politicians, companies, celebrities. 2020 and on has really destroyed my faith that we as a people could make any form of small sacrifice to help each other or the world, or to stand up for what is right, even though it may be difficult. I honestly thought people cared about each other before that. I can't say that now. Story 37. That losing someone you love can feel absolutely debilitating, but the world is not going to stop to care. Story 38. Recovering from an injury. I used to be able to recover from a sprain in a week. Now it takes months, not to mention all the physiotherapy. Story 39. The drudgery of making shopping lists, buying food, putting it away, getting it out, making meals, cleaning up after those meals, and then doing that over and over again until you die. Figuring out what to make for dinner for life was a surprise. Story 40. That one day you will be the old and wise one of the family. The people you looked up to are gone. You're now the one who has to help others, who has to be the good example. And it might happen sooner than you think. Story 41. How much of adulthood is admin? Not big stuff, just endless tiny decisions and forms. Rent, utilities, insurance, taxes, doctor letters, password resets. You don't finish it, it just respawns. And no one checks if you did it right. Friendships don't run on vibes, they run on calendars. If you don't schedule people, they quietly disappear behind work and bedtimes. A simple coffee can take 3 weeks of back and forth, and if you don't nudge it, it won't happen. The boring bills hurt more than the fun ones. A dental crown is $700, $900. 4 new tires can be $400, $600. A plumber shows up at $120 an hour before parts. Then your parents start needing help, and you become their unofficial project manager. Everyone told me about responsibility. No one said adulthood is just freedom plus homework forever. Story 42. Finances. My gosh, there needs to be financial management classes in school. People need to be taught about investing and saving money. They also need to be taught about common scams that cause people to go into extreme financial debt. Think about this for a second. If your average commute to work is about 10 minutes and you buy really expensive vehicle, you're basically paying a whole nother house payment just to have something that sits in your driveway most of the time. That is crazy to me, but people get roped into it. Most people get themselves in way too much debt before they ever start making any real money. Story 43. Something that hasn't been mentioned in the top couple pages. In addition to the effort it takes to keep friends plan meals, buy food for said meals, vacuum some floors, do some laundry, scrub the toilets, change the bed, etc., etc. Those efforts just never end. Next Monday, start of a new week. All those tasks are still in front of you. They didn't disappear over the weekend, and they'll still be on your to-do list next Monday, and the Monday after that, and the Monday after that. Relentless. Story 44. When I was a kid, I thought that our leaders and politicians had their shoot together, like they were smarter than me, and they have everything under control. Now I realize we have leaders that are so stupid, even I wouldn't hire them to work for me, let alone run the world. Story 45. That money matters so much in life. As an Indian, I regret that I didn't go to Canada for higher studies. Would have made me much richer and much happier. Story 46. That it would suck this bad. Being an adult now, like right now, is absolutely not what being an adult in the 80s and 90s advertised to be. I want a refund. Story 47. The whole perspective of age. 18-year-olds get smaller for each year. I'm 28 now, and 18 looks like 15. 40-year-olds look like 30-year-olds. In my head, I can't believe I was that small at 18. My parents haven't looked a day older in my eyes. Same with my older siblings. Also, when talking to 18 to 22-year-olds, you start to realize how gradual the entry into adulthood is as well. Most people have no idea what's going on, and I don't think there's a lot of people who really think they are mature. The people who say they are mature is IME, the least mature of the bunch. When you speak to someone who has only studied their entire life through, then you can see what being clueless actually is. Also that you don't actually feel older. Sure, I get neck pain or back pain if I sleep on the couch, or when we played tipsy soccer. An entire day, my entire body broke down for 2 days. But mentally, I'm a kid. Only thing is that 18-year-olds are even bigger kids, except in size. Story 48. How difficult it is to lose a parent as an adult. It is considered as something natural, and of course not as traumatic as losing a parent as a child teenager. But it broke me. I always thought that I would go through it like everyone else does, that I would be sad, but I would be able to handle it. It literally broke me to lose her at 31. I don't think I will ever be the same person again. Story 49. That I'd still have no idea what I'm doing. I always thought adults had it all figured out. Thought some switch would flip in my brain once I reached adulthood. Hasn't happened. I'm doing relatively well, but I often feel like I'm just bumbling my way through life and constantly getting lucky. Makes it hard to not worry that it'll all come crashing down at some point. Story 50. How much the appearance of competence depends on limiting the scope of what you acknowledge to be important. My first clue to this was when I realized was that my parents only managed to be 100 on top of everything because they acknowledged such a narrow definition of everything. It took me many decades to realize that most people practice this limitation as a conscious or subconscious strategy to maintain their self-esteem. If you have a long list of things that you think are important, but which you're shoot at because you don't make time for them, and you wonder why other people seem to not suffer from this, it's because they are protecting themselves by systematically, though perhaps subconsciously, defining their obligations to be a little bit less than what they can comfortably handle. Now I see it everywhere. And as my friends enter middle age, I see some of them pruning their lives and starting to dismiss and denigrate concerns that they used to acknowledge rather than admit they can't keep up with them any longer. I also see it politically at work. Every company decision has to attend to some concerns and neglect others. Depending on the environment, politically savvy people often subtly, or not so subtly, undermine concerns that aren't addressed by their favored course of action. In a healthy group, their leaders call them out for it, saying, "We can't forget that X is important, even if we aren't choosing to address it now." But it's a clever hack if leadership is weak or cynical. Story 51. that you'll be the one making all the decisions and taking responsibility for them too, even when you don't know what to do. Story 52. Probably how work will make you feel like you are not even living life, especially if you have zero or small interactions in workplace. Top that with almost no going out for a walk with some friends because you either don't have or they live elsewhere, and it's just living like a corpse. Story 53. That going to kindergarten, sleeping during the day, eating porridge, not thinking about anything, will be the best memory and privilege, which is not in adulthood. Story 54. How fudge great it is. So many people said things would get so much worse and would get pissy when I did not give a shoot and they all fudge lied. Being an adult is fudge awesome. Story 55. That you will want to punch of adults in the face daily, but if you do well, it's a trip to jail. Can't fix ignorance. Story 56. The amount of choices you have to make. And if you think you're taking all the right choices, your life can turn out real shoot anyways. Story 57. Mistakes have monetary impacts. I suppose when I was a kid, my mom ate all the costs, but now whenever I make a mistake, it usually has financial impacts. Story 58. I cannot believe how much time I spend on food. Buying food, storing food, preparing food, cooking, eating, cleaning up. Shoot, like we're just food processing machines. When you're a child, food just appears in front of you, but when you're an adult, you have to find and prep it most of the time. Story 59. Every single thing that happens, I have to hold myself accountable. Dishes piling up, my fault. Bills are due, my task. A spill, better take care of that. I never knew how easy I had it as a kid. Sure, I did chores and learned responsibility for my actions and all, but I had a crash bubble, a net. If I didn't do something, sure, I'd get in trouble, but eventually someone else would do it. But now, no matter how hard I procrastinate, breakfast isn't getting made and the clothes aren't getting folded. Now that I'm married, I've got somebody to share it with, and it is so freeing. Nobody understands the bliss of, even if you don't do it, no matter what, somehow, despite complaining and trouble, others will do it. Story 60. Unless you have very outgoing and friends who communicate a lot, the amount of effort it takes to be social is a lot, especially after 2020. Story 61. How expensive everything is. I honestly have no idea how anyone can afford an apartment, even with roommates. Story 62. That it's all on you. No one is coming to bail you out. Not your fault, still your problem. Someone screwed up you over, still your problem. No idea how to do it, still your problem. Story 63. That people you grew up with will change and become irrelevant to you, and you should focus on yourself instead. Story 64. That you just feel like a kid doing adult things. There isn't an instant switch where you are like, I'm suddenly an adult. Story 65. How expensive appliances are. I don't need a smart fridge, washer dryer, dishwasher, etc. I just need it to work. Even the dumb ones are darn near 1,000. I don't need my fridge or any appliance to connect to the internet. Story 66. I know everyone complains about taxes, but holy shoot, why is the government taking half my paycheck and there is basically nothing to show for it besides a giant military? Story 67. You're all alone. Your life isn't protected anymore like it used to. If you die, everybody would just be upset at the inconvenience. Nobody cares about you unless you provide some kind of value, either that be your body or money. Story 68. That you will become a caretaker for your parents. I knew it would happen, but it's much younger, difficult, and more expensive than I expected. Story 69. How you overthink and analyze every single thing you do and go into a spiral. Adulting is hard. Nobody told me adulting was hard. Oh wait, they were busy overthinking their own decisions. Story 70. That there isn't enough time in a day to do everything. And if there is enough time, I don't have enough energy. Story 71. Having a baby deprives you of sleep. Having teenagers deprives you of your sanity. Baby cute and no sleep. Teenagers, not so cute anymore. No sleep and anxiety through the roof. Hits and causes shell shock. Everyone gives you the what to expect when you're expecting book when you're expecting. But nobody gives you the how to get through the teenage years with sons and daughters. Story 72. How many people are just real pieces of crap? I saw a dude sideswipe a car and then drive away. 10 minutes later, I saw a dude just throw his fast food trash onto the sidewalk. Who does that? That's not a culture thing. That's just disgusting. Story 73. Maybe this is just me, but never feeling like an adult. I have a house, I pay bills, all that, but I just feel like I'm faking it. Little example is stuff like plane tickets or anything expensive. I just bought one this morning, and that fact that I can both afford it and no one has to give the okay is still weird to me. Story 74. That it would be so hard. I always think being an adult would get me to a lot of places and buy everything that I want, but in reality it's hard to get there, and you don't know when. Story 75. Someone mentioned making friends, so we'll say politics at work. Being good at your job is helpful, but if your goal is to get a new position, either inside or outside your current company, who you know is infinitely more important. For equal amounts of training a new skill or getting to know people has a far better ROI in terms of job placement. Story 76. That the work never stops. Not only your job, but all your obligations, appointments, etc. Just when you thought you had everything handled and taken care of, something new comes up. Whether it's a health issue that needs addressing, something broken in your home that needs repairing, unexpected expenses, etc. It goes on and on. It's never finished. Story 77. Back pains after 30 years. How to regenerate money to fill your stomach and that of your significant other. Back pains, back pains. Story 78. Sometimes the only person stopping you from making yourself happy is yourself. But other times, the only person stopping you from making bad decisions is also yourself. You cannot always tell the difference. Story 79. You know those stupid rules that get dictated to you as a teen that make no sense, so you decide you aren't going to follow them. Well, as an adult, you find out some of them actually do make sense, and it benefits you greatly to follow them. Then some teen comes by and talks about how dumb that rule is, and that it doesn't make sense, and that he's not going to follow it. When I was young, I thought real-life cheats were a great way to level the playing field, and only morons make you go about learning how to do things the long, hard way. As an adult, I make my kids learn the hard way to do things first. Only when they are good at it can they start using the cheat. It's why I don't like contest shows. Musicians should suffer playing for 10 a night in a dark, smelly bar for a few years before playing in venues that have toilets that have been cleaned within the past 5 years. Story 80. My parents have lost so much of their cognitive ability. My mom taught me phonics, deriving meaning from roots, using context clues, and other essential reading skills. Now she reads a passage and seems to only have a surface-level understanding of the text. She asks questions about what it means, asking for predictions about what comes next. I have to ask her several times to put down her phone before we can have a conversation, or when it's time to get ready. It's like she can't think anymore. My dad can barely change the channel on his television. He miscalculated the date the other day by 2 weeks. He's quick to get frustrated and angry when something doesn't work. It's devastating. I love them dearly. Story 81. That nearly no one else around me would behave like adults. People are shoot at work. People are shoot when I hire someone to come work on the house. They are shoot at the grocery store. It feels like everyone outside of friends and family is out to fudge you over. And eventually you get over it, but you can never let your guard down. Wish people could just be human beings. Story 82. Adulthood gets a lot lonelier than anyone warns you about. You start realizing that not everyone who's friendly with you is your friend. Life isn't sunshine and roses like it once felt anymore. You begin to get burdened with responsibilities. Acquaintances fade away, and suddenly you're left to face the harsh realities of the world alone. And when life throws you into a bad situation, no matter the cause, it's ultimately you who has to pull yourself out. Story 83. Cooking when you live on your own. I'm 22. I bought a house and moved out of my parents 6 months ago. One thing I took for granted was coming home to a cooked meal every day. Not having to worry about cooking food after coming home is such a privilege. I work a full-time job and attend college, so I'm always on a time crunch. It can be a big inconvenience when I have to cook. It's not all bad, though. I have gained a decent amount of baking knowledge since I've been cooking for myself since I moved out. If you live with your parents, tell them, thank you, and give them a hug when they make you food. You will definitely miss it once you move out. Story 84. People don't seem to stop wanting conversations. As a matter of fact, once you hit like 35, and since I have what many would consider the conservative starter pack of things visually appealing to the worst of America, I often get included in conversations said in the most camaraderie-engaging tones imaginable. Everything from chicks right to treating people from other countries as actual vermin. I was prepared for mustache twirling, maniacally cackling, money-worshipping villains. I was not prepared for hatred-worshipping, punishment alternative tastes-having, racist, sexist, genderist, misogynist, jackasses to think I can be their besties. Story 85. Sure wish I'd known perimenopause would be a fudge mental shit show. Wife is a totally different person now. Story 86. Once you start making above 40K, your amazing free health insurance as a kid goes away, and medical bills fudge suck and will put you in debt. Usually it's supposed to last until you're like 26. Story 87. People change. You change. Life is very dynamic, and it's so unpredictable. Trying to predict it is a wear of time. No pun intended. Story 88. The guilt when you realize your parents were mostly correct and were acting out of actual concern for your well-being. Story 89. Hair genetics. Nobody told me I might start balding in my early 20s. Some people I know started losing earlier as well. I assumed that if I went bald, then at least I'd be able to grow a good beard and mustache. Nope, or well, nope-ish. Mustache is blondie and never looks good, and the front part of beard is similar but at least grows in well enough. I've got a mixture of hair colors in the beard, and it doesn't come in as thick as some of my other similarly balding friends. It does cover a good area though. Took years but got there. It's more thickness consistency. So if I knew either of those, I might have made different hair choices when I was younger. Tried out longer hair more often while I still had capacity to grow it in. That said, I'm not bothered by balding, especially as I look good with a shaved head. I'm more complaining about timescales not being communicated and lack of mustache options. In fairness, my dad and his dad didn't go bald, and so wouldn't necessarily have known. But none of the guys on my mom's side said anything. LOL. Story 90. Some people will let you down, even the ones you love the most. Some of them don't deserve your worries, love, or caring, but let them go is harder than you think. Story 91. That if you aren't an extrovert and go out getting, quote, pissed and, quote, bucking to peer pressure and certain social normalities, you're instantly on your own. You like most things your friends like, but apparently, getting pissed and high on substances is more important proof of friendship. Story 92. That business degree you got from an expensive private liberal arts college was absolutely worth it in any way, shape, or form. Story 93. How much money you need, even if you are cautious, single, and childless. It's rent, mortgage, food, bills, utilities, insurance, fuel, transport, household stuff, vacuum, loo cleaner, loo roll, floor cleaner, endless, miscellaneous. This doesn't include extra entertainment, holidays. Story 94. As many here said, friendships take a hit as we move towards family, responsibilities, work, but the nostalgia always brings smile, even during a hard day. Story 95. Some of the most toxic and dangerous people you will interact with will have the same surname as you. Story 96. Adult loneliness hits hard when you're the only single friend left and all of your friends are married with kids. Making new friends as an adult is also extremely hard. Story 97. How much of your life is spent on basic maintenance of your home apartment, such as cleaning? You will clean every single day. Story 98. That dinner does not just appear. You have to think about it, buy it, cook it, and even wash dishes. Every day, forever. Story 99. How much time, upkeep, administrative bullshit really takes. Laundry, cooking, groceries, bills, scheduling appointments, cleaning, dishes, plants, everything. In a 22 household, everyone has their duties, and it is somehow managed. Then when you move out to live on your own, you kinda expect that the workload will be smaller because there is only one person in the house. That turns out not to be true. And if you want to be well-groomed and live in a clean apartment with home-cooked food every day, it takes huge portion of your life. Story 100. I never feel caught up or like there's nothing for me to do anymore. Now, if I have a clean house, there's bills to pay. If my bills are paid, I have work to do on the house. If the house is clean and bills are paid, my car needs work. Story 101. How hard it is to find a good job. You can get any job, but one that matches your financial desire and is respectable to your education is like an unicorn. Story 102. I think someone on here might have already said it, but taking care of your health. It's expensive, but so important. Story 103. How much my mind will feel exactly as it did when I was 20. I just mean back then I felt like I had no idea what I was doing most of the time in college. Now I feel the exact same except at my job. I just assumed by the time I was 42F, I would be so grown up, wise, etc., that I would just know what to do in any situation. Man, was I wrong about that one. Story 104. that your body just hurts. Eating hurts. Waking up hurts. Going to bed hurts. Walking hurts. Everything fudge hurts. The older you get, the little injuries and illnesses stack up, and at least in my case, I feel 30 years older than I actually am. Story 105. Sometimes you'll love someone. They'll have problems and issues you want to fix and help with, but you can't. You can be like, whatever, I'm out. You can try and fix them, but the best thing to do is keep going and hope that they catch up eventually. Story 106. How it's so lonely once all your friends start getting married, having children, and creating their own life. Story 107. Having to juggle my need to recover from surgery with my need to pay my bills. Like, I just had hip surgery and I should be resting and doing my exercises, but I'm terrified that missing another day of work will be the difference between being able to afford bills and rent and winding up on the street. Story 108. Lack of true downtime where you don't feel guilty because you know there are things that need to be done. Story 109. That you're going to lose all your friends that you made from childhood to the end of high school, or that you were actually left out the entire time and you were too young to understand that. Story 110. You are going to have to pick up all the broken pieces of everything you become because of what your parents did wrong with you. Whether it's trauma, neglect, toxicity, being spoiled, impoverished, sheltered, parentified, enmeshed, emotional abuse, indoctrinated, instilled bias or bad values into you, or strict standards, the outcome is yours to realize, comes to term with and heal from and make a change. Also, parents rarely take any sort of accountability, so your relationship may not be as you expect. Whether you realize it or not, your inner child will need healing, or else you will be damaged and or passing on generational cycles, even if it's not the same way you were treated as a child. Story 111. Car dealerships is a scam. Never buy a new car from a dealership by yourself. Always have an experienced car buyer with you at all times. If you don't, they will fudge you every single way possible. They'll literally upcharge you about $20,000 if you don't know any better. Story 112. The crap ton of fees that companies charge for various bullshit. Cable internet cost is only $49.99 mo. Sounds great until you see the list of fees tacked on that amount to a monthly bill of closer to $200, or the T-Mobile bill that says, get a family plan for $99.99 for up to 3 lines. That turns into $255 a month before phone payments with a 3-year contract. Story 113. If you work hard and practice discipline in your life, other people who don't will feel entitled to what you have built. Story 114. How freaking constant everything is. Dishes, bills, errands, emails, laundry. It never ends. I thought adulthood was about achieving stability, but it's mostly just managing an endless to-do list while trying not to burn out. Story 115. That sleep when you're dead was literal. Also, the constant low-grade panic of choosing what's for dinner every single night until you die. Story 116. While taking a nap is a pleasurable thing in concept, waking up from one feels like you're waking up from a years-long coma with aching joints. Story 117. About the aches and pains from sitting in a chair all day. That getting old isn't for the weak-willed. Story 118. How you're stuck in grinding mode forever. I have done the laundry 10,000 times. I have put the dishes away 10,000 times. I still haven't fudge leveled up. Story 119. That I would have to plan meals, get the groceries, and cook dinner almost every night for the rest of my life. Story 120. Property tax. I honestly had no idea. I pay a huge mortgage. Then after I'm done, I still have to pay to live in this house. I fully understand the reasons for property tax now, but 20 years ago it blew my mind. Story 121. How hard, friggin' terrifying it is, and nobody is going to save you, and probably not even help you. Youth has partied too hard on the young, who don't understand this, and never really could. Story 122. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to passing. Story 123. I'm so tired. It's not only harder to make friends with people my own age, although I've still managed it. I'm visiting some today in another state. It's also increasingly awkward to make friends with people younger than me. It's not as big of a deal as 30 talking to 22, 23, but now I'm 40, and my new coworkers are like 22, 23, and I'm like, feeling like I'm grandpa. Like, they said they're going to EDC. I told him I used to go to Pasquale's parties out in the Mojave before he started EDC, and I'm not sure if they understood. 1. Who Pasquale is. CEO of Insomniac, who used to run EDC and other events before selling out to Ticketmaster. 2. That EDC didn't always exist. It used to be in LA before moving to Vegas, and the first ones were 2 carnival rides in Chinatown. 3. What is a Mojave? It's a large desert in Southern California where renegade parties used to be thrown. By the way, EDC, Big EDM Festival in Vegas. Story 124. Second puberty. Around 35, my skin became acne-prone. My hair changed texture and thickness. My body shape changed, and my taste buds, stomach, oral texture sensors said, you know what? We dislike anything too sweet, and we suddenly love onions and things, but not on things, so still don't put them on burgers or pizza. And raw green peppers can be a snack, but cooked green peppers are still gag-inducing. Story 125. That at some point your parents will start playing a bigger part in your life. It's not the case for everyone, but it happens more often than it's talked about. Story 126. The amount of guilt and sadness I would feel as a mother. Guilt that there isn't enough of me or enough time. Sadness that time moves too fast. Story 127. People showing a genuine interest for a week, then never texting you again. Pisses me the fudge off. Most of the time they're the ones who start talking to me. Story 128. Being an adult means chaos, misery, loneliness. Life is hard. Some people master it, some people just can't, so it's a total mess. Story 129. How relentless everything is. There's always something that needs doing, sorting, considering. Yes, you can put things off, but there's nothing like the obliviousness of being a kid and not knowing everything your parents were thinking about at any given time. Story 130. There is never a break. If a problem pops up and you fix it, there will be a new problem without fail. Story 131. The responsibilities pile up and they don't stop. Every day doing boring jerk shoot you need to do. Things constantly decaying and needing to be repaired. One day you wake up and there is simply no more energy. You walk around like a zombie and people get pissed about it. Story 132. Not having time to do anything but having a million obligations you have to be there for. It's worse with ADHD cause time management is not one of my strong suits. Story 133. How much of an expensive eater I am, disclaimer. I work out and eat healthy, lots of fruits and veggies, etc. To be fair, when I got my first big girl job, the biggest diff I saw was the fact I'm able to invest into my health more, and it's so worth it. Story 134. People get less informed about how old they are and are more likely to stick their one view on every opinion, no matter if it fits. It's just getting worse the older the people get you deal with, and it's frustrating because at least I am more aware of it. Story 135. Having to deal with aging parents who have no mental health awareness and no general self-awareness. Trying to raise my kids, heal myself, and raise my parents is burning. Me. Out. Story 136. That people who claim to have your best interests in heart sometimes don't. In fact, I had to learn that one pretty early. And my parents, especially my dad, are still trying to act like I'm overreacting. Story 137. No one cares what your favorite dinosaur is or what you want to be when you're grown up. Makes starting conversations trickier. Story 138. How awful working actually is. Yes, I always heard it was tiring and hard, but darn, it made me so sad I just wanted to cry every day. I dislike work. I went back to school, but knowing I need to work again next year makes me want to rip my skin off. Story 139. No matter how well planned or disciplined your life is, it's just one FAFO away from ruining it entirely. Story 140. How judgmental other adults are about the smallest, most harmless shoot. I've finally gotten better at being like, I don't give a fudge. I'm playing video games all day in peace and buying what the fudge I want, but man, the older you get, the more people act like there's some life template or stuff you need to stop doing. Story 141. That it doesn't seem fair at all for some people. Hitting me hard at the moment with the loss of a much-wanted baby in the safe zone. Hospital said out of 10,000 births a year, what happens about 5 times a year. While other friends are on their second, third baby with no trouble conceiving. Also money. Should have saved since I started working at 17. Story 142. That I should have taken my health more seriously when I was younger. Should have eaten healthier and not all the junk foods and sodas and candies. And now for the rest of my life, it's all about eating boring foods and drinks and exercising. Story 143, loneliness. Growing up in 60s and 70s, we were surrounded by all the neighborhood friends every day. Walking to school, playing outside afterwards and weekends. I always thought that's how old age would be. Nothing would change. Story 144, meal prepping, and that most fruit and vegetables go bad way faster than I thought. I didn't realize that my mom was schedule managing like 10 to 20 vegetables and various fruits at any one time on a daily basis. I bought some radishes a few weeks back and they were slimy within 3 days. And despite having unmedicated ADHD, yes, actually 3 days. Everything seems to last less than a week, and fruit sometimes less than that. Considering I was constantly rabbit nibbling on carrots and radishes and grapes and such, either I was very deluded about how often my mom went grocery shopping, which is distressing because I went with her frequently, but now that I have to manage things myself, I rather dislike it. Or I definitely don't understand how to balance fridge crisper drawers, though it's likely both. Like I know she went on quick shopping trips sometimes, but we were about 15, 20 minutes outside of town. That's not exactly a, oops, I forgot to buy white and red onions distance, though I've seen her do it for more recipe-crucial ingredients. But still, we didn't live near a farmer's market, unfortunately. Was she running into town early in the morning or what? And how did she manage to cook with basically all the veg? I have ADHD, and I for sure got it from her unmedicated self, so WTF. Story 145. How grueling a full-time job is. Then you have to grocery shop, do laundry, clean your house, and somehow try and find time and energy to maintain a social life. Story 146. That you might plan on a life in a certain way, but fate is laughing their jerk off. My husband died at the young age of 66. We should have had a lot more time together. At least that was the plan. I would learn financial skills, learn to do everything myself, lived on my own when I was younger. At 65, it's the first time being on my own. Cared more about myself then, making peace and keeping the calm, and paid more attention to what I had right in front of me. Story 147. There are still bullies. Some people never grew up. Some people's mommy and daddies spoil them. Not everyone texts back or cares about what's going on in your life. Story 148. The transition from school into a career. In school, you're told exactly what you need to do step by step. There's a little creativity required on your part for the how, but there are clear expectations, clear tasks, and the way you become the best is by being as close to perfect at your work that you can be. If you do extra credit, you get a boost to your grades. People care if you're in jerk, but being in jerk doesn't affect your GPA. While some task work is given at work, you are required to generate a lot of it yourself in white-collar work. Nobody's going to tell you how you get promoted. You have to figure it out yourself, watching who moves up in your corporate culture and understanding what they're doing differently from you. Typically upskilling and taking on out-of-scope work that demonstrates they can do the work of the next level, or they have stronger relationship management skills. Being the smartest person in the room while being a jerk will neuter your career in all but the most limited individual contributor roles. And what's fudge is nobody will tell you that you're out of line unless it's egregious enough for HR to be involved. They'll just leave you to rot and figure it out yourself. Perfect is the enemy of good enough at work, and a lot of folks spend too much time and waste money spinning their wheels trying to move the needle the last 5, when the 95 plan costs less and achieves almost the same goal. Story 149. We get so caught up chasing goals that we forget to take care of ourselves. Most of us don't pay attention to our health until something forces us to, when our body starts complaining, or it actually affects our routine. Health is wealth couldn't be more true. Story 150. Mama will no longer being the one waking you up. You have to do it on your own. It's so hard for me to get up in the mornings. Story 151. How much time I was going to spend planning meals that I was never going to eat. Planning, shopping, and cooking for food that wasn't for me. It's freaking wild. Story 152. That the people you think are your friends will stab you at the back and will not feel sorry for it. Story 153. Your 20s are not the fun times you probably thought they would be. It's the getting everything ready stage. Story 154. How much power you have to just change your life whenever you want. Like you can just up and move somewhere new. Do something super out of your normal routine. Make an entirely new group of friends. Quit your job. Story 155.
Che non esiste un momento in cui ti senti adulto. Ti ritrovi solo un giorno a fare la spesa, a pagare bollette e a chiederti perché la mozzarella costa più della settimana scorsa.
Story 156. That real adulthood starts at 30-year-old, when your brain has developed fully and you can finally find yourself and just live your life according to your own values. At least this was the case for me. I dislike my teenagerhood, and childhood was not that special either. I'm happy I'm truly and finally feeling free in my 30s. Story 157. How expensive existing is. Like, you think rent and groceries are bad, then suddenly you're out $400 because your car battery died the same week your cat needed the vet. Adulthood is just surprise expenses and emails. Story 158. How you're always either tired, doing dishes, or wondering where your money went. No one said adulthood was just chores and vibes. Story 159. How hard it is to not compare yourself to other adults that you perceive as being ahead of you in life. Story 160. I always thought if you went to college, made good choices, worked super hard, got a job, that your life would be okay, have a home and food to eat, etc. Like good things would happen if you did things the right way. Not true. Story 161. Sleep deprivation. As soon as I turn 30, if I don't sleep by 10, next 3 days will be absolute dog shoot. Story 162. That there would be times in life when shoot would go south and you'll have to fight it all by yourself. There would be no way out, just your resilience and mentality. In those times, nobody will come to save you. You'll be your own savior, and this cycle will continue until you're alive. It will never be a smooth sail, but it doesn't have to be. Things won't change for you. You'll have to adapt, no matter what it is or where you are in life. Story 163. Nobody warned me that groceries cost more than rent some months, and you'll still eat cereal for dinner because cooking feels impossible after work. I'm honestly pretty surprised that being tired becomes your entire personality. Like, I used to think adults were just dramatic about being sleepy. The weirdest part? You'll have money for a $200 dinner, but refuse to buy the 12 fancy soap because that's too expensive. What's the most ridiculous thing you've convinced yourself is too expensive while spending money on something way dumber? Story 164. Realizing that everyone at college is selfish and even her closest friend could betray you. More dramatic than high school, TBH. Story 165. Everyone will constantly lying to your face, and that's supposed to be the norm. I thought my family was just full of shoot people, but it turns out that how most people are. Story 166. That someone who you married, got a house in a great neighborhood, and family walking distance away could totally change, and their personality, and end up cheating behind your back and just walk out. 8 years down the drain. Story 167. The non-stopness of it all. I miss being able to wake up on a Saturday and do nothing until like 2 or 3. Now I have to get up early and do stuff I don't want to on my days off. Story 168. Can happen before you're an adult, but I think it turns you into an adult. So, the first time a person you care about has a big health scare will be scarred into your mind, and you will go into a small panic every time you are looking for them and can't find them, or they are expected to be somewhere and they are late. And as mentioned in this topic, many times it's harder to make friends and keep relationships active. So both these things mix into a situation where you know if a certain person is calling you out of nowhere, it's because it's to tell you that someone died or had a big health problem. Story 169. How every drawer in your house slowly becomes a miscellaneous drawer, and you have no idea how it happened. Story 170. Midlife crisis, realizing that you're on a trajectory for mindless, underpaid, and undervalued work. You'll have to manage the next generation of morons. Navigate the poly crisis while you pretend to have your shoot together. Story 171. My mom always used to warn me about depression. My young self used to say, "Why would I be depressed? I have nothing to worry about." Well. V. Story 172. How much of your time is taken up by cleaning? App never feels or stays clean for long. It's exhausting. Combine that with depression and other mental health struggles, and it feels impossible. Story 173. The increase in, and almost constant, appearance of eye floaters apparently happens to most people around their 30-40s. Story 174. That I'm not God's little favorite that will eventually stumble onto my passion that leads to the inevitable, lucrative career. Story 175. Arguing with professionals to do their job. My doctor kept blowing me off, and I knew something was wrong. I had to threaten suing for her to actually write an MRI which showed that my disc was herniated. Story 176. This is probably a cultural thing, but just because you are older doesn't mean you have authority over your life. There will always be someone older than you who will feel entitled to make decisions for you, especially if you're living with them. I am now married with 2 kids, but I live with my in-laws who constantly tell me what I can and cannot do with my kids, whether I should go out at a certain time or not, whether I should accept a certain offer of something or not, etc. It sucks, and I realize that they will always be around. Story 177. No one knows what they're doing. Remember when you asked, "But why?" and you got, "Because I said so," for an answer? There was no answer. Story 178. That people don't really get more, quote, mature. They are just much better at hiding their immaturity in their day-to-day life. Push the right trigger, and you'll see the same behavior that preschool children have. I have seen 2 ladies, 20 years older than me, come into my office because one had stolen the other pen. Not a nice pen, a 10C Bic. And when I tossed each of them a box of pen and told them to get out of my office with that petty bullshit, I was reported to HR for being rude about it. Story 179. Sometimes I had an inkling that my parents were full of shoot and just winging it. They were absolutely full of shoot and just winging it. They did it better than me. Story 180. The bills. The costs of everything. The debt to pay off the debt to pay for things I couldn't afford because I had debt to pay off for not having enough money due to bills. The lack of savings due to having debt. That feeling where you finally get your bills under control and have a clear path out of debt, but then something unexpected comes up setting you back by several months, and that happens several times a year. Story 181. That no one has to care about you. There is no teacher, parent, person in charge with a duty of care over you. You're on your own. Story 182. How freeing it is. I want a ball pit in my living room? Done. I want to eat mac and cheese 7 days a week? Done. I want to dress up like a vampire? Done. Go down the giant water slide 20 times in one day? Done. Travel to a foreign land alone? Done. As long as I pay the bills on time, I am free to do whatever I want. Story 183. Your pubes go gray too. I mean, thinking about it, of course they do. Why wouldn't they? But it was just a surprise is all, and nobody ever mentioned it. Story 184. That life would just be about working, studying, sleeping, and taking care of the house whenever possible. Story 185. That standard American courtship behavior, dating, then having a boyfriend-girlfriend, and letting love guide you, is not standard across all countries and cultures, and not even in the United States. It even changes over the decades. And although I grew up believing that standard American courtship behavior was the best, now I see flaws in it. I'm old enough to see several of the problems it causes. Story 186. Basically, you're going to go through life winging it. It's a series of stumbles through the chute. Life is really just like being a dolphin. You jump up and catch a bit of that pleasant air and enjoy life. But in a moment, you're back down in the chute where you can't actually live long. So enjoy the fun times when they happen. Story 187. That if you don't start planning when you're fairly young for what happens to you when you are 70, if you live that long, you may have a really bad time. That getting old with diminished capabilities attracts vultures who will steal from and emotionally, physically abuse you. If you don't have a good plan in place. I'm 72 and managed to get a good plan in place. Most of our friends our age are completely in denial. In regard to aging, there are planners and there are crashers. Be a planner. Story 188. Career-wise, it's okay to make those tough decisions for the sake of your own personal advancement. No one is going to be there for you when you can't pay your bills on time, nor determine how much you will make coming out of college. I miss my friends and a few exes a lot. LOL. But I did over-prioritize them to the determinant of my own success. It was fun having people around, but my lord did I hardly give myself any leg to stand on financially. Story 189. Your parents getting older and eventually needing the same help they once gave you as a small child. Comments. Story 190. The general boredom and fatigue of everyday life. You spend the first 18 to 22 years of your life in school, where change, novelty, and built-in goals are constants. Then adulthood hits, and suddenly the world just kind of levels out. You settle into a job or career, and life becomes a cycle of repetition. The only things you genuinely look forward to are weekends and vacations, and they always feel like they're over before they even start. That said, I still prefer being an adult to being a kid. There's something to be said for a boring but stable life, but the sheer monotony of adulthood, the year-over-year sameness, is something you can't really grasp until you're living it. Story 191. Just how stupid a lot of adults are. I'm shocked that a lot of elected officials in Washington are genuinely stupider than a high schooler. I remember taking economics, history, science, and English, as in having the literacy skills to understand the deep meaning for a story in high school. Yet these idiots don't understand any of that. Trump is going to have to bail out the soybean farmers now, since his asinine tariffs made no other country want to buy them. Story 192. That there isn't enough time in a day to do everything. And if there is enough time, I don't have enough energy. Story 193. The fact that adults don't even know what the hell that's doing and just hoping their decisions don't end up being bad. Story 194. That you'll be tired for no reason. Like you wake up tired, work tired, eat tired, relax tired, and then can't sleep because you're tired of being tired. Story 195. How important quiet and stillness will become, especially for parents. Doing absolutely nothing sometimes is not wasting productivity. It's recovering sanity. Story 196. Quanto sia difficile gestirsi, ogni giorno, le spese aumentano e lo stipendio diminuisce. Non affatto facile, soprattutto se uno ha una famiglia. Poi, quanto sia difficile lasciare amici legati alla scuola o agli studi, perché prenderete strade diverse. Una mia carissima amica dopo le scuole superiori, andata in America e non l'ho più rivista. Story 197. Great thread to read as someone whose life only started being good at 20. I hope I'm still happy in 10 years. Story 198. The future you thought of and the things that you expect would just happen versus what has happened is very different. Story 199. Taking care of aging and ailing parents. You grow up talking and thinking about being a parent and taking care of kids. No one warns, guides, or prepares you for the stress of taking care of a parent. There are few resources available on how to do anything related to elderly care compared to child care. Story 200. At some point, the novelty of being able to stay up as late as you want fades, and you go right back to having a bedtime. Story 201. If you're kind, oftentimes people think you're being patronizing, or they try to take advantage of you. Story 202. The pains and aches you will get and have to cope with that will stop you from doing things you did in your 20s, 30s. Story 203. Many adults haven't learned this yet. You have to be the people you want to see in the world. That includes not littering, putting your cart away, being cordial, polite to people you dislike, etc. Story 204. Nobody told me being an adult means saying after this week, things will calm down every week for the rest of your life. Story 205. I was well prepared for the quote-unquote big stuff, but little details slipped my mind. For example, I knew I needed to budget to pay the water bill, but I didn't think